Welcome to Whittington Castle.
Whittington Castle, a castle in northern Shropshire, England.
Owned and managed by the Whittington Castle Preservation Fund. The castle resides on a 12-acre property. The strikingly picturesque and romantic ruins are steeped in much history, with tales of bitter border warfare, romance and legend. The Trust reopened the castle to visitors after a restoration project in 2007, with the assistance of a £950,000 grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and are currently charged with its upkeep, turning it into a local landmark and preserving it for future generations to enjoy.
Whilst there is evidence of this site being inhabited in prehistoric times, the story of Whittington Castle begins soon after the Norman conquest of 1066. Acting as a deterrent to the princes of Wales and serving as a staging post for raids into the Welsh lands. During this period, it was almost certainly a simple motte and bailey made primarily of wood, featuring a main keep or tower surrounded by an outer wall, and with a bailey below containing stables, storehouses, and a barracks for the castle's garrison.
The first official mention of Whittington Castle in the historical record comes in 1138, when it was fortified by William Peveril against King Stephen, during the events known as the Anarchy, a civil war beginning in 1139 between two claimants to the throne of England, named Stephen and Matilda, and said to be one of the darkest periods in English history that followed the death of King Henry I.
With the loss of law and order, many nobles attempted to regain lands that they believed that they had hereditary rights to that had changed hands during King Henry I's reign, and frequently changed sides between the two claimants in attempts to gain an advantage.
Focusing back on Whittington Castle itself, it is believed that during this period of time the main keep at Whittington had likely been reconstructed in stone, standing as a more permanent display of English power on the border. As we approach the central ruins, we see what is possibly the remains of up to 5 remnants of towers, similar to those restored close to the castle gatehouse,
following the death of King Stephen du Bois in October 1154.
He was succeeded by King Henry II to the throne shortly after, in December 1154.
The castle was granted to Roger de Powys 11 years later in 1165.
And following the failed revolt by King Henry's 3 sons and his wife Eleanor of Aquitaine.
It is believed in response to this King Henry granted aid to Roger of Powys in 1173 for repairs to be made to the castle. In 1195, Fulk Fitzwarin II made a claim on Whittington Castle by right of the honour of Peveril, a large area of land that Fulk claimed belonged to him.
The judgment of this claim landed in Fulk II's favour. However, he died before he was able to take the matter further, and Whittington remained out of the Fitzwarins' hands. In 1200, the castle was granted by King John to Maurice, son of Roger of Powys. This may have been done to spite the young Fulk III, who had become head of the family following his father Fulk II's death.
Legend has it that Fulk III and King John had come to blows over a chess match, an incident that John did not take lightly. He was a persistent thorn in John's side. This led John to charge Hubert de Burgh with putting an end to Fulk's activities. To do this, he granted de Burgh a force of 100 knights.
Fulk would eventually be forced into hiding in the court of the French King Philip II Augustus.
However, fortune bestowed Fulk III in 1204, after he was pardoned by King John. His claim to Whittington was restored at the expense of being forced to pay a large fine of 200 marks for the trouble he had caused.
In 1223, the castle was captured and destroyed by Llewellyn ab Iorwerth during one of the countless conflicts with the Welsh in this period.
Llewellyn was described as a brave warrior, but also a shrewd diplomat.
He was said to have united most of native Wales under his rule
to defend the borders of Gwynedd and the heartlands of Snowdonia. The castle, however, was later returned as part of a peace treaty. After its return, the castle was rebuilt fully in stone. The layout of the castle has not changed since this time, with the exception of the main keep, which would be replaced by a more luxurious manor house. The castle had remained in the Fitzwarins' hands until in 1267, nearly 40 years since its destruction and subsequent rebuilding. It found itself back in Welsh hands as a result of the Treaty of Montgomery with Llewellyn ab Griffith, Prince of Wales, was signed on the September 29, 1267. 1282, the castle once again came into the possession of the Fitzwarren family. It is likely at this time that the keep was replaced with a more comfortable manor house.
The Welsh border was far more secure than it had ever been since before the Norman invasion of 1066, and the English lords of the March could afford to live in more luxury.
The castle would see over a century of relative peace, with only some minor repairs needing to be made in 1402. Unfortunately, 2 years on from this, in 1404, the town of Whittington was burned to the ground.
This was during the rebellion of Owain Glyndŵr, a Welsh leader, soldier and military commander, who was well educated as a lawyer.
He went on to form the first Welsh Parliament under his rule and was the last native-born Welshman to claim the title Prince of Wales. Despite this onslaught and the destruction of the town of Whittington, the castle was not taken. However, the consequence of this was the land was now deemed to be of such little worth, the lordship itself was considered to have no value. Following the ascension of King Henry V to the throne in 1413, he undertook a campaign of reconciliation with the Welsh, granting pardons to many of the most powerful Welsh leaders. This effectively ended the ongoing Welsh revolts under Glendower.
This act made the border as safe as it had ever been. Henry V even offered a pardon to Glendower himself, but the Welsh prince refused.
All of this ensured that Whittington would no longer be needed to serve its role as a bulwark against Welsh raiding or as a staging post for English invasion. In 1420, the last male heir of the Fitzwarren line died. The castle and its associated estates would pass into the hands of Fulk XI's sister, Elizabeth, who then married Richard Hankerford.
My visit to Whittington Castle is almost concluded, and I hope you have enjoyed this delve into its historic past.
One final thing I would like to mention before finishing is the more mysterious stories of ghostly goings-on and what may have inspired the story of Robin Hood. Going back to part of video 3 minutes 55 seconds in, after John became king, he handed the land to Meyric, son of Roger of Powys, out of spite. It was suggested Fulk ended up killing Meyric because of this, forcing him to live in exile as an outlaw with the Borg and 100 knights in pursuit. A romance written in medieval French called The Chest of Fulk Fitzwarren showed similarities in terms of the details of the story of Robin Hood. He is also the subject of reported ghostly sightings of him returning to his home, along with 2 pale-faced children looking out of the windows of the gatehouse
and seen by passers-by.
To see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already done so.